welcome to More Than Sunday, the podcast that aims to help you on your journey of discipleship, not just on Sundays, but on every other day of the week as well. You're listening and watching episode 12. This is our final podcast of our year of discipleship with me, Eve Powers, and Hannah Malcolm. Hi, Hannah. There she is. It's such a shame we can't be together to record episode 12 due to the current coronavirus pandemic lockdown, but we hope that we're going to bring you a brilliant conversation nonetheless. So our theme this month is invitation, and here to discuss that with us are the Right Reverend Mark Ashcroft, the Bishop of Bolton, and Michael Harvey, who is the Executive Director of God and the Big Bang Project and developer of Back to Church Sunday. Welcome to both of you.
Good to be with you.
Thank you. Let's start, as we always do, by asking each of you, what does discipleship mean to you? Michael, can we start with you?
Well, I guess for me, I was as a youngster discipled by kind of Frank, who was the youth leader in the church that I went to, and I didn't realise I was being discipled at the time. But Frank sort of kind of gave me opportunities to make loads of mistakes. My goodness, he must have been pulling his hair out at the time. But actually kind of he encouraged me to develop a love of the Bible. He was my Sunday school teacher as well as the kind of the youth leader, and he really kind of believed in me. Or saw something in me before I saw anything in myself. And so, you know, for me, part of discipleship is having a discipler, somebody who essentially, you know, comes alongside you. And so that's what I would see as discipleship, is that, you know, kind of, you know, somebody is helping you on the journey.
Brilliant, thank you. And Bishop Mark, what about you?
Yeah, so for me, being a disciple is being a follower of Jesus. And when I was at school, I went to this meeting with a guy called Brother Andrew, who was an amazing person. He was known as God's smuggler because he used to take Bibles and Christian literature into the Soviet Union when that wasn't allowed. And I went to this talk by him. And at the end of the talk, he said, do you want to be a disciple of Jesus? Means that you say to him, I will do whatever you want me to do, and I will go wherever you want me to go. And it was one of those kind of invitational things that's been a formational milestone in my life. And he said, you know, if you want to say that, would you stand up and make that promise? And I did. And I guess for me, that was really foundational in my own Christian formation. As somebody who wants to do whatever Jesus tells me to do, go wherever he wants to go. And that's why we've got the background, actually. That's one of the reasons for the background. He took me to Africa, took me to Harpay, took me to Manchester, and it's been great following him in that way. And I guess not only following him, but also trying to become more like him. And so for me, being a disciple is about being formed into the likeness of Christ day by day, which is a really difficult thing.
Thank you.
So our theme for this month and our last month of the More Than Sunday series is invitation. So I'm curious to hear from both of you what you think it means to live as disciples with invitation in mind, maybe with an attitude of invitation, or how has invitation shaped your faith and discipleship journeys? Bishop Mark, could we come to you first this time?
Invitation is really important, and I think about this quite a lot, about why I might invite people and what motivates me to invite people. And I think for myself, certainly my own experience of becoming a Christian, beginning to follow Jesus, that I want to invite people because I love Jesus. That's the kind of foundational thing. And sometimes we think of invitation as kind of motivated, well, we want the church to grow, or we want to be do this, that, or the other, to have some output. And I think for me, inviting people to know Christ or to events or to be part of something, to be part of a community, is really about love, and helping people to experience the love of God either through the community of the church or through an encounter with Jesus Christ. So that helps me to invite people because I'm doing it out of a motive that I feel is rich, and it's kind of, whenever you're excited about something or somebody, you want to invite other people. You know, I found this new app, or I found this new restaurant, or this new recipe that we're trying out, or this new plant for the garden, or whatever it may be. And it's kind of inviting people out of that excitement about what's going on in church and who this extraordinary person Jesus is. So that's probably the first thing that I want to say. And it's just kind of incredible, particularly with lockdown that we're in at the moment, but how easy it is to invite people, because people are looking for community, they're looking for spiritual experiences, they're Googling prayer like mad, and there's so many resources out there. So, and it's so easy just to tap in, and people can do it at their own time and in their own pace. I was talking to somebody yesterday, they run a Bible study in Arabic, and they're saying that kind of, it used to be just Manchester people that came to the Bible study, but now they're having people dipping in from Abu Dhabi because somebody has invited their friend to be part of a local community, and they're studying God's word together.
Yeah, I guess for me, kind of when we first thought of the idea of Back to Church Sunday, of which of course came from the Diocese of Manchester, and then spread out throughout the world. It went to 18 countries in the end. 16 years old now, and I certainly kind of don't promote Back to Church Sunday any longer. I'm really interested in a national weekend of invitation right now, and I suppose for me, when I first started this, I kind of thought that what God had got us doing was about welcome. You know, how can we welcome people into the life of the church? Until I started to realize, from talking to lots of Christians across Western Christianity, that this wasn't really about welcome, it was about invitation. And when you basically kind of ask a normal congregation, and can we say, are there any normal congregations? No, let's just leave that there. If you ask a normal congregation, is there somebody God is nudging us, you know, to invite, and just leave a little bit of a silence, you know, not too long, by the way, for Pentecostal congregations, because they go cold turkey, you know, very kind of quickly in silence. But for Anglicans, you know, kind of we're masters of silence. Anyway, when you ask a congregation, is there somebody God is nudging them to invite, 70% of a congregation already has the name of somebody, or somebody comes to mind when asked that question. I'm calling that the church's greatest missed opportunity. Completely missed, because we don't ask the question. And I kind of think, you know, one of the reasons that this topic is such a really interesting topic is that ultimately it's God that's doing the inviting here, because all we've got to do is ask God, and God is, you know, has always been an inviter, always been an inviter. If we look at our Bible stories, you know, if we look at the history of the church, you know, we can see a God who's on mission here. And for me, you know, to follow Christ is to actually kind of hear the prompt, you know, of God, to actually kind of reach out to our neighbor on a daily basis. And I echo Mark's words here, is that I think the ground is well prepared at the moment. I think, you know, we're right. Loads of people, you know, are saying they're having deep conversations with their neighbors. And the question for us all is, what's the next step when we're in lockdown? And Mark has suggested, you know, one of the next steps is easy to invite to an online service. Maybe there's some other things that we can invite to as well. But yeah, I think invitation is at the heart of a God who's on mission.
As I'm just reflecting on the ways that both of you really highlighted the witness of other Christians, and the invitation of other Christians in what has directed your own discipleship journeys. But why then is it that we find invitation so difficult? If it's God's work, if God's doing the inviting, if it's the heart of what the church should be about, why is it so hard for us? Should we come to Mike?
Yeah, really great question. And it was a question that I basically kind of pursued for 16 years. Having asked, kind of thousands of Christians, across multiple denominations and streams, kind of a stupid question. What are the reasons that Christians don't invite? If, as I've said before, 70% of us have got the name of somebody in Mancunian, what the blooming heck is going on? What on earth is going on? If 70% have got the name of somebody, and I think as I've kind of asked that question around the world, it's really, really obvious that the emotion that comes out of that question is we're afraid. That fear comes out, and I think it's my observation that we need to have a much more nuanced approach to fear than we do at this present time. For example, why shouldn't we feel afraid, when God nudges us to do something? Most of our Bible stories show that there's kind of fear, that the saints in the Bible are talking about. They feel a fear. Moses didn't want to go. Kind of Jonah runs in the opposite direction. And even kind of Jesus, when he kind of sends, I can't remember whether it sends the 12 out or the 70 out, his motivational speech wasn't that great, because he said, "Go, I'm sending you forth as lambs among wolves." I mean, try and have that as your church motto for the next 12 months. I dare you all. Try and have that one. So I think fear, it's a visceral thing, but I think it's also a sign that God may be doing something in us as well. So I think, that's my observation, that fear, we've not handled it very well. And I think we need to have a more nuanced approach.
I totally agree that fear is part of the issue, and I guess it's worth exploring in amongst ourselves, kind of fear of what, and what might be the worst case scenario. There's a friend of ours who sort of, when feels anxious about it, just tries to detail in her mind kind of what exactly am I afraid of, and what are the things that I can put in place that kind of lessen the fear. So one of the things is fear of personal rejection, that if people know you as a Christian, it will spoil your relationship. And that sometimes does happen. Kind of somebody I met the other day was saying that they were walking to church, and their neighbours saw them walking to church in their street, and they said, "What are you doing?" And they said, "Oh, we're going to church." And the neighbour said, "I didn't know that you were one of those God botherers, Bible bashers," or something like that. Now, that's a fairly unusual experience. And actually, the person I was talking to said, it made me realize that I needed to be more upfront about my faith. Just shocked that they didn't know that they were a Christian. For most people, inviting somebody to church does not break their relationship. And that's a kind of irrational fear. I think the other fear is that what we do is not good enough in church, and that we're somehow embarrassed about it, that it's not kind of high quality. And I think one of the things that I've learned during lockdown is that actually I rather love these kind of grainy, rubbishy videos that vicars put up and do their talks. And it looks all amateur, but actually what we're looking for is the authenticity and the love and the community. And so we slightly underplay kind of the value of our liturgy, the value of our worship, the value of our community, and I think we should have more confidence. So one of the antidotes to fear is just a bit of courage and a bit of confidence. And the third thing that I would say that is that I'm the only one who's doing it. And I know that Michael does a lot on helping churches to work together on inviting people. That, you know, if it's just me by myself, then I might be a little bit afraid. But supposing we're all doing it and we're all praying about it, and we're saying kind of accountable to one another and say, who are you going to invite to our Christmas service or our online service? Then that makes it a lot easier, because we feel that we're not alone. Actually, God is with us, and all our friends are with us, and they're all in the same boat. And I think that helps, but just doing it in a way that is open, that is not defensive, and allows people to say no easily, and just maintains the relationship.
It's kind of occurring to me as I'm listening to you both that it seems as though invitation is something that doesn't just potentially transform the life of the person we're inviting, but is also about transforming us. That it's a work of faith, and so God is working in us. I was wondering whether either of you might be willing to share some of the joys or transformations in your own lives you've experienced through practicing invitation.
Let me kind of answer that, Hannah, by just going back on what Mark just said there, because one of the elements, I think, which is perhaps going wrong in terms of how we're trying to help congregational members become inviters is I think we need courage and bravery front and center. It is a step of faith, you know, that we're taking when we're being inviters. I don't like confidence as a kind of as the prerequisite before doing anything. I think confidence comes down the line. I think courage and bravery come first, and we need courage and bravery because there will be fear there. And one of the things I'm trying to do at this moment in time is, and we can talk about this a little bit later, but I'm trying to set up something called ACON groups, just with what Mark has just said there about accountability. I think having, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 other people, you know, that you can actually kind of share with your invitational stories, and you know, Hannah, as you said, that this is a kind of not just a process of mission, but it's a process of formation and discipleship as well. And so that's best to be done, I think, in groups. And there's a lovely kind of story of somebody I've been working with in another diocese. Shock horror. Sometimes I work with people in other dioceses. I know it's a shocker, isn't it? And one particular kind of guy, you know, kind of who was sat in one of my ACON groups, and just saying, oh, nobody comes to mind, absolutely nobody at all, you know, oh no, you know, for 2 weeks, nothing at all, you know, God had not kind of prompted with anything. The 3rd week, he came back absolutely shining, because God had placed a lady into his mind that he'd not spoken to for around about 10 years. So in fear and trembling, he kind of calls this lady, and she says to him, oh, thank you ever so much for the call. I've not spoken to somebody for 3 weeks. My next door neighbor has just died of COVID-19. And so I really, really appreciate, you know, you calling me right now. Well, I'm telling you now, you know, kind of they had an hour-long, deep conversation, and, you know, kind of all from God prompting him. And this introverted guy, you know, kind of who, you know, kind of didn't think he had anybody to invite whatsoever, you know, kind of the joy of being able to kind of work, you know, with God in mission, you know, was just, you know, to behold. And I'm seeing that over and over again, that actually if we work in tandem with what God is wanting us to do in invitation, there's something happening in us as well as through us. And I think this is where we've made a big error in modern Christianity of separating mission and discipleship. I think it's a catastrophe, you know, kind of for us, you know, to actually separate these two, you know, and we've almost kind of thought discipleship is this, you know, head knowledge thing, you know, kind of as long as I get, you know, kind of the Bible teaching or the Lenten course in my head, that's discipleship. No, I don't think so. I mean, I wouldn't be here if I hadn't been through that. But don't we learn as we go on mission? Isn't God doing something in us as well as through us?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question as to our experiences of inviting people. As I was saying, I think it's easier at the moment. So, for example, recently, I dipped into some of the spring harvest material, and there was a guy called Pete Gregg who does 24/7 prayer, and he was leading some devotionals at the beginning that I thought were really good. And so because there's online material, you can say to people, oh, I've tried this, would you like to have a go? And connected with that, there's this app called the Lectio 365. You just say that I've really enjoyed this, would you like to have a go? There was something last year called Try Praying, and that was another good kind of mechanism. So for some people, and I think you have to be careful about what people might be interested in. So for some people, we've invited people to, the Cathedral 9 Lessons and Carols or something like that, and said, we're going, we've got some spare tickets. And we do this with other things as well, kind of invite people maybe to a concert or something like that, but maybe not even a Christian concert, but say, we happen to have some spare tickets, or we'd like to come up for a meal. So there is a culture of invitation, not just about church things, but about forming friendships and relationships that I think is an easy first step. And you're thinking about that person that you want to invite and say, what would they really enjoy, and what would be helpful for them? So maybe if they're stuck at home, Lectio 365 would be a fantastic thing to invite them to. So another recent one was that churches in Bolton, we clubbed together to do this Believe in Bolton mission, which was amazing. And there was an event with a guy called Warren Furman, who was Ace the Gladiator, such a hug of a man, unbelievable. And Jill Duff, who's the Bishop of Lancaster, and they kind of, I did an interview with Warren, and Jill did a little talk. Amazingly easy for me to say to Facebook friends, we're doing this. Would you like to dip in and see what it's like? So I think it's partly getting into the habit of inviting is helpful, just to ordinary things. I think it's partly just thinking about the person that you want to invite and what would float their boat, so to speak. And it doesn't have to be church. There's lots of stuff out there. And that's one of the great things about lockdown. There's so many resources we're becoming aware of online. So that's been my recent experience of inviting people. It's mainly digital. And I guess maybe it's easier for me with a collar on and all the rest of it. But I think we all invite people, do you want to come for a coffee? Why don't we start there? That might be just a good place to start, and just in building friendships, and sometimes stuff comes up in those conversations, what we're doing at church or whatever it may be, that just spark little questions. So it's sometimes not just inviting people to an event, but it's to a relationship, and to a question, and onto a journey.
I really liked the point that both of you were making around the importance of a culture or a habit of invitation, in what it means to learn to have an attitude of invitation to invite people, that it's not just about working up the courage to send someone a text inviting them to watch a service, but that we're trying to develop relationships, we're trying to develop a habit of being inviting to people in our lives. And it made me think about the ways that actually for a lot of discipleship type activities, we talk a lot about habit, and developing habits of discipleship, whether that's been our themes of generosity or justice or community, or waiting. All of those things are habit kinds of ways of being in the world. And we are in these very strange times. We're in lockdown. And I was wondering whether there have been ways that this time of lockdown has had to shape or change the ways that you think about the habit of discipleship. Have you had to develop new habits? Have you found that previous habits of discipleship have particularly benefited you while we're all stuck at home? Should we come to Bishop Mark first?
Yeah, Thank you. And just in terms of habits of invitation, at the moment, as we're recording this, we're in the Thy Kingdom Come season. And as Michael was saying earlier, I think one of the keys to those habits of invitation is to have on your prayer list people that you would love to see encountering this extraordinary person, Jesus, in some way or another, whatever that may be. For myself, just in the last couple of years, I've been using a thing called PrayerMate. It's an app that helps me to organize people I pray for and things I pray for. So that's been helpful for me. And on that, you can put just 2 or 3 names or 5 names. It's in that during Thy Kingdom Come. So that's helpful. And I think I've become more disciplined in my praying over the last couple of years as a disciple of Jesus. And I think that's something that's been developed during the lockdown, that there is maybe a little bit more space, that we're not doing so much traveling around. Normally I do a lot of traveling into church house, or that takes ages, and I try and pray during those times. I'll read papers or something like that. So I think just cultivating more prayer habits has been good. And I think the other habit that I'm as a disciple that I'm encouraging myself is to be fairly positive during lockdown, positive about people, positive about the world around us at the moment. I'm seeing lots more birds in the garden, partly because I'm around at home a little bit more, and just appreciating all that God does. And it's out of that spirit of thankfulness that you get the motivation to say, oh, isn't God amazing? And I want to invite people to encounter this amazing God and to appreciate the things that God has done for us. So maybe that spirit of thankfulness and prayerfulness have been 2 habits that I think have been particularly affected by lockdown.
Yeah, I think for me, this time has been a fascinating time as an observer of mission. I think there's been a return to the early church. That's what I think is happening right now. We can't currently physically meet together, but we've been dispersed, to our neighborhoods. It's really difficult, to love your neighbor if you don't actually know your neighbor's name. And one of the things that this lockdown has done, anecdotally, is that we're getting to know our neighbors. We're walking a little bit more than we were before. We are coming out maybe on a Thursday evening to clap for the carers. We're forming WhatsApp groups, street or road WhatsApp groups, just to kind of keep in touch, with one another. Mm-hmm. It's like a return to the early church, this, how the church started. And I think we've got to reimagine what church is when we can't currently physically meet together. And, I love, the thought of, where 2 are gathered in my name, I'm there in the midst. And, when God, kind of prompts us with to connect with somebody, because I think this is a season of connection as well as invitation right now. So when God prompts us, to connect with somebody, why wouldn't it be the case that when we pick up our video technology or our phone and we say, how are you? That where 2 are gathered in my name, I'm there in the midst. So I don't think we need to lose, the fact that actually church is not just the physical act of worship, but it's also, kind of when we're video calling somebody. Because my goodness, people are letting us into their homes at this moment in time. We're having conversations with them sat on their settee, on their couch, on their armchair. These are wonderful moments. And with people being more open at the moment, moving from being invulnerable, to vulnerable, then all sorts of deep connection can be made. I'm trying to get 100,000 Christians across the UK to pray a simple daily prayer, which is, Lord, today, who do you want me to connect with, out with of the church? Lord, today, who do you want me to connect with out with of the church? And then we'll just allow, you know, the name to pop into our mind, which might not be right at that moment. It might be when we're out walking or out kind of doing some shopping. And normally when the thought of the person comes into our minds, it will normally be, oh no, 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 not that person, give me another. But just pray that prayer, you know, Lord, today, who do you want me to connect with? And hopefully we'll post up a video, if it's possible, about Acorn in the time of this virus, because I think to get into a habit of invitation and connection, you know, this is a wonderful time to kind of develop that deep connection with God and deep connection with our neighbour right now, and to form maybe groups of 2 or 3 Christians just to share some of the kind of the God incidences that we find as we do this.
Bishop Mark and Michael, it's been fantastic to chat to you both. Thank you so much for being willing to share with us the work that you're doing and your experiences of discipleship and invitation. And we finish every episode of the podcast with suggested actions for that month's theme. And so this month, we are inviting those listening and participating in More Than Sunday to develop that attitude of invitation in whatever way they can. So it might be inviting a friend or family member or a neighbour who doesn't usually attend church to experience your church community, whatever that looks like for you at the moment. So maybe it's a Zoom prayer group or an online service. Maybe it's a Church of England worship hotline for those who don't have access to the internet. And more broadly, we're thinking about this theme of connection. So following the suggestions from Bishop Mark and Michael, perhaps you can take the time to think of someone you know who might be feeling isolated or cut off, or might just be someone that comes to mind for you to connect to. How can we help to develop attitudes of invitation towards those in our lives? And what would it mean to invite those people into connection at the moment?
At the beginning of our year of discipleship, we asked these 3 questions. What is discipleship? Why do we do it? And how do we bring faith into our everyday lives? We hope that you have all been able to dig a little deeper into these questions over the past year, and that More Than Sunday has given you the chance to feel renewed in your discipleship. But the journey doesn't have to end here. We encourage you to keep More Than Sunday at the heart of your discipleship and to continue to think about how you can live out your faith every day. Who knows, you might even start our year of discipleship again next month and encourage somebody else to join you in doing so. If you use Facebook and Twitter, we encourage you to continue sharing your stories from your discipleship journey as you reflect on the theme of invitation and how we reimagine our discipleship in this very, very different world. But for now, thank you for listening and for joining us for More Than Sunday.